Hello there. This morning I'm going to tell you about my favourite birthday. Picture this. I'm on an island in the Mediterranean. It's called Corsica. It's south of France and it's north of Tunisia in North Africa. It's very early in the morning and I'm lying in my sleeping bag on the beach, and it's a beach by the main town of the island. There are two main towns actually. There's one where the tourists go and there's one where all the people who live in Corsica mostly live, and that's where people go. So I'm lying in my sleeping bag on the beach and I can feel the very faint breeze just blowing over my face and ruffling my hair. And I haven't bothered to open my eyes yet at this point because I'm just luxuriating in being warm in the sleeping bag and feeling the breeze on my face. And I just lie there in total peace and tranquility until eventually it's like, and I open my eyes and I lift my head up and I look and I can see the sun is just rising over the sea, and I realise it's the 6th of April, it's my 21st birthday. Now at this point in my life I'm at university, and so my life is very much a matter of not doing what I want to do on a daily basis, it's what I've contracted to do. I'm doing a degree, I need to go in the laboratory to do lab work, I need to write reports, write essays, go to lectures, take copious notes, and so on. And so every day it's all kind of organised what I've got to do. And suddenly I'm on holiday, and holiday means holy day, that's what it means. It means a holy day, sacred day. So it's one of my sacred days, it's my birthday, and I'm enjoying seeing the sun's rays shining straight at me and travelling across the waves from the horizon. And eventually I get up and I have with me one book. So I'm backpacking, I've got my rucksack with me, but it's not actually on the beach, it's actually in the place where I'm staying. So I better give you a bit of a background here. So my brother is in love with this woman who he's destined to marry, and she's called Leary, a Corsican woman, and it's been arranged that this is where I'm going to spend my 21st birthday, in Corsica. And my brother's arranged that what I can do is I can sleep and I can cook in this workshop belonging to his friend called Ricky. And Ricky seems like an incredibly old guy to me. He's got one of these really weather-beaten faces. He's lived a lot of life, you can tell just by looking at him. And I asked him, how come it is you live in Corsica? And he said, well, England, waiting for buses in the rain. That's all he said about England. He never said any words other than that, and that was his picture, his story about England. That's what he didn't like. He loved being in Corsica. He has a really interesting workshop, very ramshackle, full of all sorts of old tats and various bits and pieces. And so I would have gone there and I have my breakfast and I go out every day. And there's only one real luxury I've brought with me in my rucksack, and that is this one book. And it's The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. I've already read the book that you need to read to start with, called The Hobbit. And this is my main treat while I'm away in Corsica, is whenever I feel like it, I just go for a walk and find somewhere beautiful to sit and to be, and I open my book and I carry on reading about the adventures of Frodo, and eventually reach the point where Frodo is having his encounter with Gollum. And for those of you who've seen the film, I will say this: the way Gollum is portrayed in the film is pretty much exactly the way I saw Gollum in my imagination reading the book. So I was reading the book before the films ever came out. And I also say this: if you've never read the books but you've only seen the films, you are missing so much. And when you see The Lord of the Rings and you hold the book in your hand, you'll realise there's no way they can get very much information about the book into 3 very long films. It just can't be done. There's so much richness and detail in the books. So this is a major enjoyment for me, reading Lord of the Rings whenever I feel like it. And that's what I spend my day doing. I'm wandering from place to place, stopping, reading Lord of the Rings, going out something to drink, whatever. And the time that I see my brother and his girlfriend, who's going to become his wife, is when we have arranged to meet and have dinner in a restaurant, which we do. And the only thing I really remember about that restaurant meal was the mashed potato, because it was obviously the French style of cuisine, and it was not like any mashed potato I'd ever eaten in my life. It was so rich. It was like this creamy, ethereal ambrosia substance, and I thought, wow, it's absolutely incredible. They probably just put loads of cream in it and mashed it really, really well. And that is pretty much my birthday, 21st. I don't remember getting any presents, but I probably did from my brother. And when I was reflecting on this, when I woke up early in the morning, it suddenly dawned on me, my goodness me. All those years ago, if I bothered to think about it, there was a huge clue as to my nature of who I am. Now I need to be really upfront and say that this was before the film with Dustin Hoffman called Rain Man was released. And it's a time before people really knew about this word, which is called autism. People simply had no frame of reference for that. But when I think about it, I think about what most people would want to do for their birthdays. Mine is pretty darned weird. And I guess that's what I always did. I just thought, well, I'm pretty darned weird. That really is what I am. And for someone to have the greatest enjoyment of seeing 2 people at the end of the day, and the rest of the time being in a country where I do speak French, admittedly, but not particularly well at that point in my life, then it's like, what a strange thing to do, to be spend the entire day virtually on my own with a book to read and just wandering around going where I wanted. And it is, to this day, when this memory came up, I had not thought about this for very many years, and it just suddenly came up and I thought, well, I'm going to share that with you. But this is my very subtle introduction into autism, because 2023 is the year that I finally woke up to the fact, my goodness me, I am so autistic, but I didn't realise. And in fact, it was suggested to me by the person I was in a relationship with, who I was living with her in northwest Spain, and a year or 2 later, after I'd left and gone back to live in England, that she sent me an email saying, have you ever thought that you might well be on the spectrum? And I remember being totally freaked out at the idea of that, because my perceptions of autism was, it's some kind of a disorder, it must be some kind of an illness. Bluntly, something's wrong. And for a lot more time, I didn't really think any more about it. And what's been happening in the last year or 2 is more and more members of my family are waking up to the fact that they feel that they're on the spectrum. And so that's one of the terms that you can use. You can talk, instead of talking about autistic, you can talk about being on the spectrum. I'm a person that is very intensely social at certain times, and I spend time on my own, and I've had a lot of relationships in my life, and when I'm in a relationship with someone, they are full on, and I spend much less time on my own when I'm in a relationship. But even when I was married, after a year or two, I developed this pattern that every 2 or 3 months I would simply let my wife know and let the family know I'm going to go away somewhere. One time I went away to an island in the North Sea, just off the northeast coast of England, called Holy Island, also known as Lindisfarne. And I simply was there on the retreat, and I wrote the very first book I ever wrote, called Her Story, which never got published. So I've always had this need to be on my own, but I've been able to do things like run encampments of yurts in Glastonbury Festival from 1992 through to 2007. I've been in so many situations, festivals, camps and such like, with lots and lots of people, and that's been absolutely fine. But always there's been this feeling of, after a series of such experiences, just being quiet on my own and appreciating that and feeling it's of value. It's a really helpful thing to do. Now, I've been watching and following a woman called Meg, and she's got a YouTube channel, and it's called I'm Autistic, Now What? ? And she has been the single most helpful person on my journey, because I've watched one or two other people, neurodivergent doctor, and one or two others, the names I don't remember, and frankly, they didn't do anything for me. I didn't relate, it didn't really reach me. But I'm Autistic, Now What? Meg, she has this incredible way of being. She's also got ADHD, very upfront, very open about that, which is something I don't feel that resonates with me at all. And wow, I am so much more aware of who I am, and so much more appreciative of why I am the way that I am. And I did go through a journey, and she very much helped me through the journey. I continued to have this negative judgmental view about autism as there being something wrong, and it's taken me around about 3 months, I would say, to completely reframe my experience of autism and realise that it's actually a gift. But it does come with a price, and the price is quite heavy, and most people who are on what some people call the spectrum have experienced being judged very negatively by other people. And so there's another term which I really found much easier to get to grips with at first. I didn't resonate with the term autistic at all, but I really like the term neurodivergent. And it creates this split between people who are neurodivergent on the spectrum, autism. There's a term Asperger's, which is now out of fashion. And we've got ADHD, we've got other conditions as well, dyspraxia, I can't remember, there are so many of them. All these different labels. And then as I've gone more deeply into it, I realised that on the spectrum, actually, it's not very accurate either. And the better way to look at it is to realise that there's not one spectrum between the Rain Man person that never speaks to anyone and the out and out socialite. It's not as simple as that. And this morning, as I was waking up and lying in bed, I got a shamanic download, and that was so helpful for me. A little bit of silent knowledge, which is that another way to understand it, and Meg does say this in I'm Neurodivergent, Now What? There's not a spectrum, there are spectrums, there's many spectrums, but this is my download. There's something called the Myers-Briggs 16 personality types. Myers, M-E-Y-E-R-S, Briggs, B-R-I-G-G-S, 16 personality types. And that is a fascinating thing to study. It's not a diagnostic tool, it's not a divinatory tool from a shamanic perspective. And what I realised when I looked at the 16 personality types, I could see very clearly what I was. I did the quizzes, which you can easily do, and I'm an INFJ. INFJ. So with the 16 personality types, you get 4 letters, and that is me to a T, INFJ. And on the spectrum and neurodivergent, autistic, it makes so much sense to realize this. So here's my point. There are 16 personality types, but the interesting thing is you'll find that there are neurodivergent and neurotypical people on each of these spectrums, each of these personality types. So from the Myers-Briggs perspective, rather than there being one spectrum, there's at least 16 straight away. So you'll find people who are INFJ and are very neurotypical. You'll find people who are in the gradation between that extreme and being full on neurodivergent. So this is a way to understand that it's not as simple as just seeing these people that are autistic or they aren't. And we are fascinating as human beings. We are in all flavours, shapes and sizes, so it's completely to be expected that it's going to be the case with this. And what I've learned from really taking this on is that for people who are now neurodivergent like myself, one thing that's really helpful to realise is that it is so beneficial to have time on my own, and that's how I recharge myself. And I find that I can get into a situation of burnout if I spend too much time around people. And being a shamanic practitioner, this has made it even more so. In fact, this is one of my it's a little hypothesis I've got. I've trained a lot of people to become shamans, and many of them are practicing. And I've noticed that not all of them, but a significant proportion of these people are neurodivergent, really clear. And part of being a practitioner for a lot of shamanic practitioners is time on our own. We need that, and most particularly after working with clients, after training, after hosting retreats, with or without plant medicines, or even hosting introductions to shamanism. It's really important and helpful thing to do. Time on our own, really need that. And that's how we regenerate, we recharge, and we get fully connected to our full personal power. But I have trained some neurotypical shamans, and I've noticed with them the need is much less. But even with them, they find that it's beneficial and helpful to have some time on their own. And so that's what came out to me this morning when I was reviewing my favourite birthday. I did love that so much. And I've had other birthdays where there have been parties and where there have been gatherings, and I've enjoyed them too, but that's the one that sticks out, head and shoulders above all the rest, as being one that was just such a joy. And there's another thing, being neurodivergent in a foreign country, there's a bit of a gift there, because it's so easy to tune out other people's words. And this is something that I also realised after a while, but never connected, never joined up the dots. I love particularly being on public transport in foreign countries, because people be talking all around me and I wouldn't hear anything, I wouldn't understand any of the words that they were said, which means I was able to be in my own little world. And that was a really gift. I can remember coming back to England, being on public transport, and I could understand everything people were saying, and it felt intrusive. It felt like I was taking the piss. What right have I got to be listening to people's private conversations? So there you are. That's my introduction to this subject of autism. And there are so many gifts to autism, but there are so many issues, but I'm going to save all that for another time. All the love to you.